So with Wicked pretty much dominating at the box office, getting close to that $500 million, I wanted to go back to where it all started. And of course, the movie is based on the musical of the same name, but the musical is actually based on a book. So the musical is inspired by the book that was written by Gregory Maguire back in 1995, and this is in itself a retelling of the 1900 novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which in turn turned into a film in 1939 titled The Wizard of Oz. So the book is actually titled Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, and it's a lot darker. It really is. I have not read it myself, I'll tell you that right off the bat, and I'm not trying to say I'm an expert at Wicked, but I'm a fan right now, and I definitely do want to read this before the second part of the film comes out. So basically, Gregory Maguire wanted to tell the story of the Wicked Witch of the West, who is in the book given the name Elphaba, of course, in the musical movie as well. The musical didn't come around until 2003 when it became a cultural phenomenon, and it differed a lot from the book in itself, but Gregory Maguire has said that he really love what they did with the musical as well. And basically his whole idea with the story in itself in the book to begin with was he wondered whether calling a person evil might be enough to cause a self-fulfilling prophecy. He says, if everyone was always calling you a bad name, how much of that would you internalize? How much of that would you say, all right, go ahead, I'll be everything that you call me because I have no capacity to change your mind anyway, so why bother? By whose standards should I live? And so we pretty much see the story unfold here of Elphaba and Shiz University with Glinda and the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, we know is not all that wonderful. And so I want to talk about some of the key differences here. Of course, I can't really dive into every single difference because there's a ton of them, but this is pretty much like the big major differences and things that will probably be different than they were in the book to how they were in the musical and how they will be in the movie in part 1 and in part 2, which comes out next year. So let's get into it. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification. I do want to make more videos on Wicked throughout the year as we wait for the next film. So if you want that, make sure you subscribe, but we talk about other films as well maybe you might be interested in. So let's get into Wicked and the differences between the book, the musical, and also the movie. So pretty much one of the big differences here, and of course I should have said this from the beginning, but you probably already know it, spoilers ahead for the book, spoilers ahead for the musical, Wicked part 1 and part 2. I'm spoiling everything Wicked right here. So if you're a fan of Wicked and everything, maybe you don't care and you just want to hear and discuss these things down in the comments, that's fine. But if you don't want spoilers, definitely don't watch this video. Go check out my review if you haven't already. But let's get into it. Spoilers in 1, 2, 3. So one of the big things in Wicked Part 2 that we're going to see based on what we see in the musical is pretty much a finale to all of this, right? And the finale is Elphaba melting. We heard it at the beginning of Part 1, right? They said that the Wicked Witch of the West is dead and that it was Dorothy who threw a pail of water on her. So of course we've seen this already in The Wizard of Oz where it happens by accident. It seems that Dorothy throws that pail of water onto the Wicked Witch of the West, which then makes her melt. So in the book in itself, that actually does happen as well. Elphaba dies when a bucket of water is thrown on her by Dorothy. Now in the musical itself, Elphaba doesn't die and she tricks the witch hunters that were sent to kill her by actually disappearing through a trapdoor while she's pretending to melt. And I kind of assume that that's going to be the case with the film Wicked. I don't think that they'll go that dark-witted, right? Like I don't think we'll see Elphaba really be vanquished. And of course what ends up happening later on is that Fiyero shows up as the Scarecrow because, as I talked about in Wicked Part 2, what's going to happen in that video, we see that Fiyero in the musical basically turns into the Scarecrow after Elphaba decides to save him from the Oz guards. He then goes to find her and they go off to live a happily ever after, right? So that's pretty much the end of Wicked the musical. In the Wicked book, however, Elphaba ends up dying because of the bucket of water. So that's a big difference right there. We also have in the Wicked book, Elphaba and Nessa Rose having a younger brother named Shelter God, also known as Shell. In the musical, and I'm assuming in the movie as well, there is no Shelter God that exists here. And actually Shelter God is the one who causes Elphaba and Nessa Rose's mother to die giving birth, whereas in the musical and the movie we have it be Nessa Rose who was the one that caused their mother to die after giving birth to them because the father made them take those flowers. So that's a big difference right there. There is a whole other sibling that is not introduced, but I don't know, could they introduce it? Maybe in the movie, I don't know. So in the musical in itself, we find out that Elphaba's father was actually the wizard, and this is something that Glinda discovers just after the melting happens when she shows the wizard the bottle that Elphaba had slept with under her pillow as a reminder of her mother, which he identifies as his own. So it is very much so said that he is the father to Elphaba. Now in the book, Elphaba finds this out herself after being shown by the clock of the time dragon, which is something that isn't either in the movie or musical as well as I've heard. One other big difference as well is that Nessa Rose doesn't have arms in the book, whereas in the movie and the musical she does have arms, so that's like a big difference right there as well. Also, Elphaba is already in Shiz University, and her and Glinda actually meet on the train bound for Shiz, sort of a la Harry Potter, right? Whereas opposed to in the musical and in the movie, we have Elphaba taking her sister to Shiz University, but doesn't really enroll till after Madame Morrible finds out about her powers, right? And that's where Elphaba and Glinda meet already at Shiz University. So it's a little bit different, their relationship and dynamics, right? So now that we're on the topic of Madame Morrible, in the book, we have Madame Morrible sort of be a bit more vocal about the animals and the politics of Oz right from the get-go, and maybe not really having a relationship with Elphaba that she has in the movie and the musical that's a little bit more, I would say, pleasant for both of them, where it's a little bit more like bumping heads in the book, right? Madame Morrible also is a lot more despicable in the book, as we find out as well that she is the one responsible for Professor Dillamon's death, because yes, Professor Dillamon is killed in the book, whereas opposed to in the musical and in the movie, we have Professor Dillamon just taken into custody, and that's a very crucial thing right there. Like I'm telling you, the book gets very dark. It gets very much so, I would say, grittier, and I'm very interested to read more about it as well and see what exactly else happens. I'm just reading some of the things here that I found on the Wicked fandom. One thing as well that we find out is that Elphaba and Glinda never make up after the events of the Oz Tower in the book, but in the film and the music, I'm assuming as well in the film, we will see Elphaba and Glinda make up just right before Elphaba begins to quote-unquote melt. So like I was talking about earlier, in the musical, Fiyero is actually tortured by the wizard guards, and then he is transformed into the Scarecrow by Elphaba in order to save his life. But in the book, he is actually just murdered, so it's a lot darker, like I said. In the book itself, Elphaba also has a son with Fiyero, but in the musical they don't, neither in the movie. It's never said if they do have a child, but it's implied that maybe in their happily ever after they could. So in the book itself, we actually also have Elphaba coming to want to kill Madame Morrible after everything, but ends up finding her dead. And in the musical and the movie, it seems that Madame Morrible is just imprisoned by Glinda after everything is pretty much exposed about Oz, and the wizard is then just banished from Oz by Glinda, and pretty much that's what we hear at the beginning of Wicked Part 1, the film as well. So I thought that was an interesting take and differences in some of them. There's a lot more differences in the book and the musical and the movie, but those are just some of the big ones I think that definitely give you a different perspective of how this story could have been darker. Imagine if we got this Wicked adaptation. I feel like there's just so much story in the book in itself, just from the little tidbits I've read. This definitely would have to be a show, I think, to really get the full story out there. But one of the things for sure is that the book itself definitely dives into some very strong things that go into murder, politics, and just so much more that I don't think we can really discuss unless we really start getting into spoilers and things as well. So that's just pretty much all of the big key differences I saw. But let me know what your thoughts, if you've read the book, if you've seen the musical and seen the movie, what do you think about all of them together? And there's certain aspects of it you think kind of take away from each other, or do you think that the way that they've been adapted over the years makes sense? Let me know in the comments down below. I do want to pick up the book sometime before the end of the year and really read it before the next movie comes out and discuss it more. Book club? I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, I'll see all of you next time. Hit that subscribe button, notification bell, on the road to 37,000 subscribers before Christmas. That's a big goal, but I think we can get there. See all of you next time. Stay safe. Stay positive.